Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a Gardenbite for you this week. Growing tomatoes. Yes, we are going to get into that way back machine all the way to 2021, where I chat with Ken and former Extension educator Katie Parker all about growing tomatoes. In this small excerpt from that longer episode, we talk about how do we trellis our tomatoes, because once you get them in the ground, well, heck, they get taller and you got to do something about it. Plus, do we fertilize tomatoes? And what about mulching tomatoes? That is what we'll cover in this week's Gardenbite. So sit back and enjoy.
All right, so we kind of mentioned this with indeterminates. With mine, I put them in the ground and I have a tiki torch and I just stake them up like that. But they're indeterminate, so you know what happens. They grow over the tiki torch and the tiki torch falls over, sets the backyard on fire, all that good stuff. So how do you train and then trellis your tomatoes? How do you keep them from going crazy?
So the last several years we've done stakes. So we actually get usually get 2x6 boards, like 12-foot 2x6 boards or 10-foot, and cut them into 1-inch sections and drive them into the ground. The problem we've had with that, though, is they start warping over time and they end up curving and they don't really last more than a year, just because they get so warped and stuff. That's what we typically have done, and we'll tie them up on there, kind of prune off all the suckers. We just have one vine going up. This year we're trying a basket weave, Florida weave, whatever you want to call it. So we've got T-posts in the ground. Unfortunately, we could only find the 6-foot T-posts, so they're not quite tall enough. But we've got a T-post at the end of each row, and then a T-post in between, in the middle. So we've got kind of 2 or 3 plants in between the T-posts, and we're just stringing a string in between those plants and then looping it back around. And I think we've got 3 of those on there, do like every 12 to 18 inches. So kind of a mix between staking and using a I'm trying to like here a cage for them. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that works out. The determinants we're growing, they only get 12 to 24 inches tall. So we've got the stakes in the ground, but we haven't done anything with them yet. They're still kind of supporting themselves, but the indeterminates, we've had to do that. And some of them I'm pruning off all the suckers. Some of them I'm leaving the suckers on there just to kind of see how it works.
The suckers, they're the things that grow up in like the leaf axil, right? So yeah. You leave some and then you prune some. How explain that? Sorry.
So when we stake them, what I do is I prune off all the suckers.
Okay.
So we only have one main vine. With the basket weave, I'm pruning off most, if not all, the suckers, and some I've just left all of them on there, and just to kind of see how it works. And they're the ones I haven't pruned are kind of eating everything else. They're like small shrubs right now. So
yeah,
that may not have been a good idea.
Katie, how are you? Ken sounds like backyard type garden. You are managing over 100. What, like when the deer stop eating them, like, how do you plan to manage and train all of those? Are you going to use a similar system?
Yeah, we'll use the Florida basket weave, and we'll just, we'll have stakes more frequently between the plants, and then just weave some tomato twine between the plants to help to support them as they grow up and get taller. I do need to check with Nathan, though. I need to figure out what variety of tomatoes he brought.
And so do you also, what do you prefer? Do you leave the suckers or do you prune them off?
I've been pruning them. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's easier to manage a little bit more. Last year we did not prune suckers and we just had like a mass of tomatoes. I also accidentally gave my aunt an indeterminate tomato, and I don't think, she wasn't totally familiar with it. And she's like, I don't know what this tomato is, but it just keeps producing like crazy. I was like, I think I gave you the wrong tomato. But I mean, they're both nice, but I think determinants are way easier to manage.
It's just You guys are just throwing indeterminate around like a bad word. I agree, though. So I've found, especially Katie, in that situation, when you're managing like long rows, if you don't prune off those leaf suckers or the suckers in that axle there, you're hunting for tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like a jungle last year because we planted late. We had issues with rabbits feeding on them. And so then we had to replant. And then I think we ended up moving. And so it was just chaotic. So we kind of failed. But you always learn something from your failures.
That's right. But by the time we retire, we will be really good.
Right.
We'll know stuff more than we do now, hopefully. Not get set in our ways. That's the dream, right?
Right.
So, Ken, what else do you do to take care of your tomatoes this time of year? I mean, we're getting into the 90s. It's summertime. You're doing in-ground, sounds like. So would you fertilize? What help me? Because my tomatoes need help.
So we have never fertilized our tomatoes. I think we've got good enough soils and we don't have to. You could do a side dress, a fertilizer, just put it kind of along next to the plants. Do that, usually kind of a balanced fertilizer. So it's typically recommended. And we'd mulch our tomatoes. So we rake all the leaves up and shred those leaves in the fall and store them in our garage over the winter and summer. And we'll mulch our garden with those. Also so we have kind of two separate vegetable beds. We've got a main one and a smaller one. We typically grew cucurbits and squash and stuff in. The squash bugs were getting real bad, so we kind of flipped them this year. So our tomatoes are in our cucurbit bed. And then last year we had grown rye cover crop. So that's all laid down as a mulch in there. And as that starts breaking down and stuff, and we get bare patches, I'll go in and put some leaf mulch down. But so far, so good. And that's going to help keep weeds down. That'll help with retaining some of that soil moisture. So hopefully don't have to water quite as often. And
so, Katie, what Ken describes where his tomato bed is with the rye, that is the same goals that you're exploring with that cover crop trial, right?
Right. I mean, we terminated the cover crop, so we sprayed it before we planted the tomatoes. So we did half tomatoes, half peppers. And so we no longer have any cover crop there. And so no coverage. But it was quite significant. So after planting, we had to do a lot of hand watering. It's a high tunnel, but it doesn't have a cover on it yet, which actually works out well for this study. But so we were having to hand water with just a hose for a bit. And then we got all that rain. But it was just amazing, like the water runoff with no cover versus cover. So a lot of the water was just absorbed into the ground where there was cover crop versus where there was no cover crop. You could easily see where you had watered.
It's just becoming more and more popular, those cover crops. Yep. I actually have a bag of red winter wheat right next to me, like
cool.
a 5-pound bag for gardeners. So yeah, that's
cool.
Yeah, I would like to incorporate more cover crops in my bed. So my tomatoes are planted directly into lawn. So at our new house, we do not have many full sun areas. And so I have actually taken big sheets of cardboard. I know this is going to be controversial. I've taken big sheets of cardboard and I've cut holes in them and I've laid them on the lawn and I've planted my tomatoes in the little holes. And so, talk about water runoff. When there's rain, that cardboard just sheds water like crazy. It's not as permeable as people think. And so I don't recommend cardboard as like a mulch layer. It's just something I needed to kill the grass real quick. So also, if you ever think of using cardboard, make sure you remove your staples. You got to remove all the little labels and tape and all that stuff. You don't want that in your soil. So yeah, that's my cardboard soapbox.
One thing we've done when replacing lawn into garden is we've just sprayed it. And depending on what you use, sometimes you can go in day after, 3 days later and plant. We just plant directly into that dead grass and kind of use that as a mulch.
Mhm.
too. So it's another way you can do it.
Do what Ken says.
If you don't mind, I mean, if you don't want to use herbicides, then obviously that's not going to work. But if you don't mind using herbicides, it's quick and easy.
Yeah. I'd say that mulch layer, though, whether you're using a terminated cover crop, shredded leaves, in my case, the hope is to replace the cardboard, which is already disintegrating, but to replace it with like wood chips or something that is a bit cheaper than bagged wood mulch. So still like $10 for 3 bags. I'm going to need a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was some interesting tidbits of information about tomato trellising, fertilizer, and mulching our precious love apples. Well, the Good Growing Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by me, Chris Enroth. Coming up next week, we are going to be sitting down with Extension educator Aaron Garrett to talk about the perennial plant of 2026. It's Andropogon girardii, also known as Big Blue Stem, and the cultivar is Blackhawks. So you won't want to miss that show. Well, listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening, or if you watched us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing.
University of Illinois Extension.